Hello everyone, today I want to give you my first impression on Sangonomiya Kokomi, whose banner is coming up in just a few days. So hopefully I can help make your decision with this video on whether you want to wish for her or just skip her. Obviously, if you like her aesthetic, the whole idol theme she has going on with the big ribbon and everything, go for it. But I want to focus more on whether she is useful in combat or not. So first I will go over her skills and later on possible team compositions. So they already started off by saying Sangonomiya Kokomi is a support character with excellent healing capabilities. So it's safe to assume she will be a dedicated healer. Her normal attacks probably nothing too interesting. Let's start with her elemental skill. Kurage's Oath summons a Bake Kurage created from water that can heal her allies. Using the skill will apply the wet status to Sangonomiya Kokomi. Bake Kurage deals hydro damage to surrounding opponents and heal nearby active characters at fixed intervals. This healing is based on Kokomi's max HP. A few things to note. She's obviously an HP scaling character, which is always great. You finally get some use of your HP substat artifacts. Her applying wet to herself, it can be good if you have to cleanse off a pyro debuff, but more often than not it only means you are very susceptible to being frozen. In my opinion, that's just a little bit too annoying, but the big thing about this skill is using the words active character implies that it's off-field hydro application to nearby enemies. If it's at a decent rate, this means she can be a very good enabler for vaporize and freeze comps. Moving on to her elemental burst skill. Neorite's Ascension, I believe. Summons the Might of Watatsumi, dealing hydro damage to surrounding enemies before robing Kokomi in a ceremonial garment made from the flowing waters of Sangonomiya. Ceremonial garment. Sangonomiya Kokomi's normal attack, charged attack and Bake Kurage damage are increased based on her max HP. When her normal and charged attacks hit opponents, Kokomi will restore HP for all nearby party members and the amount restored is based on her max HP. Increases Sangonomiya Kokomi's resistance to interruption and allows her to walk on the water surface. These effects will be cleansed once Sangonomiya Kokomi leaves the field. So, while her elemental burst skill is active, she gets a little bit of increased healing capabilities, and the big thing is only then basically all her damage scales off her max HP. If she isn't in her elemental burst stance or whatever you want to call it, she will deal probably next to no damage. A lot of people say they are reminded of like a 5-star Barbara when they see her, but it kind of reminds me of a Hydro Noelle, because when she pops her elemental burst skill, she heals her whole team up over a longer period of time, and she deals some damage. Barbara just presses her elemental burst skill, everyone is instantly full HP, and you swap back to your damaging characters, which is obviously a lot more valuable if you're just looking for a healing character. On top of that, it doesn't say that her normal and charged attack count as elemental burst damage. So, for example, for Raiden, it says this specifically right here. And if you remember, her elemental skill increases elemental burst damage. So there's no synergy between these characters, which is a little sad, but I guess it makes sense lore-wise. But you can't even build something like the Emblem of Severed Fates set on her, for example, to increase the burst potential while she is in her elemental burst stance. Unfortunately, they didn't list her passive skills here, but luckily in the livestream they mentioned them. The first one reduces stamina consumption while swimming for your whole team, and the second one gives her a minus 100% crit rate, and in return it increases her healing. Having a negative 100% crit rate is obviously a big drawback. Crit rate is just the most valuable stat in this game. And in return giving her healing bonus, I mean, they are basically forcing her into the role of a dedicated healer. Even if you give her an optimal setup with Kazuha, for example, lowering hydro resistance and granting hydro damage bonus, and to Bennett granting an attack bonus, and to another pyro support like Zhangling to activate pyro resonance and enable vaporize, without being able to crit, I think it's gonna be quite hard for her to deal decent damage. I assume in this setup she will maybe deal like 20 to 30k non-crits with her charged attacks, unless she has ridiculous multipliers or there's something else to her kit that isn't revealed yet, like a constellation that grants her like an 100% increased crit chance or something like this. So, knowing what we know, I assume she will just be a dedicated healer with a decent off-field hydro application rate, which will lead to either a vaporize comp or a freeze comp. For a vaporize comp, you obviously want a pyro main DPS like Diluc, Hu Tao, Klee, Yonfei, or Yoimiya. For supports, obviously we don't need to talk about Zhongli, he's just broken, he fits any comp. Furthermore, you want an emo DPS to lower resistances. Venti would work, Sucrose or Kazuha as well. If you're running a freeze comp with a cryo main DPS, you obviously can leave these supports in, because you want to lower cryo resistance and Zhongli is still broken. Ganyu would be a suitable main DPS for this, or Ayaka. If you're running a freeze comp with, for example, a physical DPS Rosaria, you obviously don't need anemo supports. Obviously, you need a electro character to enable superconduct. Obviously, Sarah is great, she provides an attack buff. You could, in theory, also pick the Raiden Shogun. She has a little bit of burst damage on her ultimate burst skill and generates energy. On top of that, she buffs elemental burst damage if you have a character like Zhongli, for example, who deals a lot of elemental burst damage. Other than that, you could also go for Fischl or Beidou, but there was the whole Beidou thing with the anti-synergy between her burst skill and Raiden Shogun's. Who knows if it's the same for Kokomi and Beidou. Obviously, you could go for a physical DPS Keqing as well. You need a cryo character to enable superconduct and freeze. You could go for Kea or even Rosaria as a support this time. And then you have some characters that would just work, but there is no particular synergy between them and Kokomi. For example, Zhao as main DPS, or Ningguang or Eula, and you can pick supports like Albedo to enable Geo-Resonance for your Ningguang, and supports like the Raiden Shogun to grant superconduct and more elemental burst damage for your Eula. So, is this limited 5-star character that is probably going to end up being a dedicated healer worth your pity? In my opinion, the answer is simple, it's a definite no. If you press your elemental burst skill on Kokomi, you're stuck on this character for at least 5 to 10 seconds, is my guess, and you will deal subpar damage and you will heal your team. If you're looking for a dedicated healer, there's a free option that is way better. That is Barbara. You just switch to her, press her elemental burst skill, your whole team goes to full HP in an instant, and you can switch off of her and go back to dealing damage. If you're looking for someone who enables a certain comp with high application rate of Hydro, you have Jingshou. There's probably no one in the game, including Kokomi, who has a higher Hydro application rate. And if you're looking for someone with a Hydro application rate that doesn't need to be as high in a freeze comp, you have Mona, who grants also a huge damage multiplier. Obviously, Kokomi can't compete with this. And even if you don't have Mona, I'd argue that you can make do with Jingshou in a freeze comp as well. Obviously, you have a healer like Bennett, which also fits better into Vaporize comps, because he is Pyro and enables Pyro Resonance. We don't need to talk about Hydro Resonance, it's obviously completely useless. You could obviously pick a Pyro sub DPS like Zhang Ling to enable Pyro Resonance in a Kokomi based Vaporize team, but one thing you definitely don't want is a lot of random Pyro application, because you want to make sure to vaporize your hard-hitting Pyro instances like the charge attacks of Hu Tao or the E-skill combo of Diluc. A lot of people dislike Klee for that fact, because her elemental burst skill actually applies a lot of random pyro, and it can screw up vaporizing her charged attacks. Alright, we made it to the end. Thank you very much for watching. I hope this helped you reach a decision whether you want Kokomi or not. Stay tuned for more videos in the future. Until then, have fun in Teyvat and bye bye.